I almost didn't check behind the garage that night. If I had just gone straight to my truck, I never would have heard the crying. It was past 11 o'clock on the night of February 21st, 2026, and Millfield was completely deserted. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The streets were empty, the storefronts were dark, and the only sound was the violent hammering of rain against concrete and tin rooftops. Marcus Monroe had been awake since 5 that morning, and every muscle in his body was screaming at him to go home. He wiped the last of the grease from his hands, turned off the bay lights one by one, and grabbed his keys from the hook by the door of Monroe's Auto Repair, the small garage on Callaway Street that had been in his family for 2 generations and was currently 3 months behind on its lease. He was 43 years old, a widower, a father to one 9-year-old girl named Sophie, and tonight his total bank balance was $412. He had been turning off the back floodlight from outside when he heard it. It was not loud. It was actually barely audible over the rain, which is what made it so strange that he heard it at all. A small muffled sound, somewhere between a sob and a gasp, coming from behind the stack of salvaged tires along the back wall of the garage. Marcus froze. His hand was still on the light switch. Every rational thought told him to get in his truck and drive home. This was a back alley in a town that had gotten rougher in recent years. It was nearly midnight and he was alone. But some instinct that he could not explain or name, made him take a step toward the sound instead of away from it. What he saw when he rounded the corner of that tire stack stopped him, so completely that he forgot for a full 3 seconds that he was standing in the pouring rain. A woman was crouched against the brick wall with her arms wrapped entirely around a small boy, pressing his face gently into her chest, as though trying to muffle his crying so they would not be found. Her dark hair was plastered flat against her face and neck. Her coat was soaked black with rain, and even in the near darkness, lit only by the distant glow of a street lamp at the end of the alley, Marcus could see the bruising. It ran from her left cheekbone down toward her jaw in a deep, ugly purple that no amount of shadow could hide. Her bottom lip was split and swollen. Her hands, wrapped around the boy's small back, were trembling, and Marcus could not tell any more whether it was from the cold or from fear or from both. The boy looked no older than 7. His shoes had no laces. Marcus stood very still and spoke as quietly as he could manage. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The woman's head snapped up instantly, and the look in her eyes hit Marcus like something physical. It was not just fear. It was the look of someone who had already survived something terrible and was fully prepared to survive something else. She pulled the boy tighter and pressed back against the wall, and Marcus watched her eyes scan him, the same way you scan a room for exits. "My name is Marcus," he said, crouching down slowly so he was at her level, his hands open at his sides. "This is my garage. You're on my property, and that means right. Now you're the safest you've been all night. I promise you that." Something shifted in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but the very first hairline crack in the wall of it. "My name is Elena," she said. Her voice was low and controlled in the way that voices get when someone has been holding themselves together through sheer will for days at a time. "And this is my son Daniel." Marcus nodded once. "Okay, Elena, let's get you both inside." He did not ask what happened. He did not ask who did it. He led them in through the back door, sat them next to the space heater in his small office, found the spare change of clothes he kept in his locker, and gave them both the dinner he had packed for himself that night, 2 chicken sandwiches and a bag of crackers, without hesitating for a single second. Sophie, who spent her evenings doing homework in the office corner while Marcus closed up, looked up from her notebook when they came in, studied Daniel for exactly 4 seconds, and then walked over and set her juice box in front of him without a word. Marcus had to look away for a moment. He found a wool blanket in the storage room and draped it around Elena's shoulders. Her hands were ice cold when they brushed his by accident, and she flinched slightly at the contact, which told him everything he needed to know. about what the last few months of her life had looked like. He set a hot coffee in front of her and sat across the desk and said, "You don't have to tell me one single thing tonight. There's a spare room at my house with a couch and clean sheets and a lock on the door. That's all you need to know right now." Elena stared at him with those dark, green eyes that looked like they had seen too much and trusted too little. "Why?" she asked simply. Marcus thought about it for a moment and then said, "Because it's midnight and it's February and you're sitting in the rain with your kid. That's enough reason for me." They stayed that night, and the next. Elena was quiet and watchful and helpful in ways that surprised him, answering phones at the front desk with a calm professionalism that made customers respond better than they had in years, organizing his invoices in a system so logical that Marcus wondered how he had functioned before it. Daniel and Sophie moved through the house together like they had always known each other, building strange little inventions out of spare bolts and wire and cardboard that Marcus found himself genuinely impressed by. On the fourth night, after both children were asleep, Elena sat down at Marcus's kitchen table and told him the truth. Her full name was Elena Voss Hargrove. Her father, Thomas Voss, had spent 40 years building Voss Continental Energy into one of the most powerful, privately held oil companies in the country. When he died in early 2024, he had left controlling ownership entirely to Elena. Her husband, a man named Richard Hargrove, had entered her life 2 years before her father's death, presenting himself as a self-made financial consultant. He had been patient and deliberate and completely calculated. After the inheritance transferred, he began slowly and methodically dismantling Elena's access to her own life, isolating her from her father's legal team, convincing the company's board through forged psychiatric evaluations that Elena was emotionally unstable, and moving assets through shell accounts that her own signature had been forged to authorize. When Elena discovered what he had done, with the help of her father's housekeeper, who had kept a private record of irregularities for over a year, Richard had hit her for the first time. She showed Marcus the evidence she carried in a sealed envelope inside her coat, documents and photographs and a USB drive she had not let out of her possession since the night she grabbed Daniel and ran. Marcus looked at the envelope on the table between them for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called his cousin Raymond, who had spent 22 years as a corporate litigation attorney in the city before a heart scare 2 years ago had sent him back to Millfield to slow down. Raymond arrived the next morning with coffee and a legal pad, and the focused expression of a man who had missed this kind of work more than he wanted to admit. What followed over the next several months was slow and difficult and at times genuinely frightening, including one night when a man in a dark car sat outside Monroe's auto repair for 2 hours before driving away. But Raymond was relentless. The evidence was solid, and a forensic accountant he brought in from the city began unraveling Richard Hargrove's financial construction with methodical precision. Richard Hargrove was arrested on March 19, 2026, on charges including fraud, forgery, domestic abuse, and criminal financial manipulation. The Voss Continental Board, presented with the full documented truth and with Elena standing before them in the same boardroom where her father had once stood, voted unanimously to restore her rightful position. Marcus kept his garage open through all of it. He kept Sophie fed and the lights on and showed up every single day, the same way he had always shown up for everything in his life, without drama and without expectation. On a warm evening in late May, Elena sat across from him at that same kitchen table and slid a document across to him. It was a formal partnership proposal for a Voss Continental Small Business Development Initiative, with Monroe's Auto Repair listed as the flagship location. But before Marcus could read a single line, Elena looked at him steadily and said, "You found us in an alley in the rain and you didn't ask a single question. You just helped. I've spent the last 4 months trying to figure out how someone repays that, and I don't think you actually can." Marcus looked over at the living room where Sophie and Daniel were arguing loudly and happily over a board game, and he was quiet for a moment. Sophie's been smiling more, he said finally. That's plenty. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness True Stories, where every story we tell is a reminder that ordinary people do extraordinary things every single day. Your support keeps these stories reaching the people who need them most. Thank you for being part of this community.